Okay, you're live.
Awesome.
Okay. I will pull
Right on. Good evening, everybody. We're just pulling up, get this, it should show up here and then I could watch it, right?
Yep.
And see the comments. I want to get to the spot where Kurt and I can see your comments.
Oh, on mute. Okay.
And then Kurt, are you hearing me through my headset still?
Yep, I got you loud and clear.
Nice. Nice. All right, we're set up.
Hold on, I'm gonna steal my phone and I'll set you up.
Oh, you want your phone back?
I do, because I probably need to. Well, I'm guessing Richard and Nikki are on. They can help answer questions.
Bradley Hitchcock says, look at all this good-looking bunch of people.
Aw.
Thanks, Bradley.
Man, you made my day.
Thanks, Bradley.
Terry Whitley, hey guys. Legends, thank you. North Georgia, Australia. Swapping phones. Okay, before we get started, I have something special that was just given to me that deserves, you know, the beginning of an episode's.
Oh, look at that.
Have you seen this?
No, but I know what it is.
You know what it is.
Yeah.
Can you fill people in on what you think it is?
Well, is it from that private reserve that they found? Like, is it, I'm guessing that's part of what it is?
It is part of what that is. However, it has been replicated.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the backstory. This is pretty cool. This is Shackleton's blend malt Scotch whiskey based on an antique blend of McKinley's rare old Highland malt Scotch. Now, Shackleton, when he went on several of his Arctic trips, like we all know the infamous Shackleton trip, but he had others too. And on one of his others, I believe he staged this. Am I correct in that history? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, Shackleton ordered 25 cases of McKinley's rare old Highland malt whiskey to take on his expedition in 1907. In 2007, 11 intact bottles containing this perfectly preserved whiskey were recovered from under the ice sheet, under the ice beneath Shackleton's base camp. All those years later.
That is cool.
They, what they did was the master blender Richard Patterson came in and he replicated it best as possible. He's like what is it for wine? It's a sommelier or something. I don't know what that is for
a master distiller or something.
I know, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I know that's for wine, but there's some, you know, equivalent for Scotch or whatever. So anyway, well, we talk about Landcruisers and trips.
I think the best part is though, you got to tell people who gave this to us.
Oh my.
That's an important part.
Our marriage counselor gave this to us.
I'm not going to read into that. I won't read into that.
In the years that we have been seeing a marriage counselor about work and life and all that stuff, there has been several times where he recommended us drinking more.
Oh, that's
and maybe that is why we keep with him.
You drinking more.
Yeah.
I'm good.
So anyway, I believe it is in our nature to explore, to reach out into the unknown. Ernest Shackleton.
So good.
And that is why we are here tonight.
so cool.
I'm going to go up and answer. Do you need me down here?
No.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm having a little bit of this.
See you, Shell.
While we wait. Okay, well tonight, everybody, thanks for joining in. We got all kinds of folks coming in. Yeah, Kurt's got the Moscow Mule. His beard is on point as usual.
This is a true lazy beard right here. I'm an unkept man.
Just straight in from the wild right here.
That's it, yeah.
So, okay, well, since we have Kurt on tonight, and by the way, you're kind of seeing how Kurt and I talk all the time. We just have this banter that I just love. I want tonight to be about Kurt as much as we can and pull some genius from you as much as possible. So first off, why don't you tell everybody about your secret passion for Jeeps?
I don't even know where to begin. Like, where would I start? That photo, there's one photo of me driving a Jeep that Clay owns, one. And that was I don't know, how long was I in the Jeep? Like 15, 20 minutes maybe?
And then you got there and you're like, you want to drive?
Yeah, exactly. I was willing to give up the keys that fast. It is a wonderful vehicle. I really like the Gladiator. It's a nice vehicle. Just it's not my vehicle. It's not the first one I would pick. Maybe not the last one either.
Certainly not.
I certainly yeah, and I appreciate the Jeep packages, the Gladiators, the Rubicons, all the newer platforms. There's some neat vehicles, and if you've got to buy something right off the showroom floor, I mean, it's hard to argue there's anything more capable than those. They are very capable vehicles. So I appreciate them for what they are.
Yeah. If you missed it today or yesterday on social media, I posted a video of Kurt driving a Jeep, and it is a rare find. Even on our expeditions, like on the Great Pursuit last year, I cannot identify a single time when Kurt actually got into the Gladiator and drove it. So anyway, that leads us to why Kurt loves Landcruisers.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm all decked out in all my expedition stuff. I got the Overland Cruisers hat on tonight. I got the 62 series back here. So I'm ready to just, wash it over me. I want to know, how did you got your start in Land Cruisers a long time ago. I mean, forever ago.
Yeah, 25 years ago. The interesting part, it's funny because it wraps together with this Jeep dialogue, is that I could have been a Jeep guy. When I was 15, I started looking for what would be my drive to high school vehicle, and I was dead set at how to be a 4x4. Backstory is I thought I was going to be a prospector. It's no joke. I was like dead set on being like a mountain man and a prospector as a teenager, hunting down ghost towns and lost gold treasure. So I was looking at a Willys Jeep, a Willys wagon, which I still love. I think they're awesome, or a Land Cruiser. And the Land Cruisers popped up on my radar because I was in Moab on a mountain biking trip with my Boy Scout group. As a Boy Scout, I was 14, 15, right in that range. And I actually saw a group of Land Cruisers on the Poison Spider Mesa Trail. And I remember seeing those going like, oh, those things are so cool. So I got home, and the next few months I was I was a paper boy, man. I had a paper out all growing up, and I was saving all my money. I had dirt bikes, and I was kind of selling one of my dirt bikes to start like putting the little kitty together to buy a 4x4. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I mentioned to an aunt of mine that I was looking for a Land Cruiser. She said, I think my brother has one of those behind my parents' house, and he's in the Navy now, and I think he's going to re-enlist. So I'll call my parents and ask them if they'll sell it. And they kind of made the deal. It took as I recall, like a couple months to get a hold of him, make sure he wanted to sell it, and work out all the financial side of things. But I bought this 1968 FJ40 from him, and that was 25 years ago now. Wow. That I bought that. I was in 1995, and I was 15 years old. And my dad and I spent the next 6-9 months, a year, kind of fixing it up to where I could drive it when I turned 16. So that was the first vehicle I had in high school, and I don't have that Land Cruiser anymore. I know where it is. Still belongs to a friend and a customer, but I've never gone without a Land Cruiser since that time.
Right on. So let's get into that. Not everybody knows this, but Kurt has a Land Cruiser shop. Like his whole world is based on Land Cruisers, called Cruiser Outfitters. You've seen it on the show. You bought that back in 2000. Was it 2001 or something?
2002, January 1st of 2002.
Okay.
So I had worked there with Daryl, who is the previous owner. He started it in 1992 timeframe, somewhere in the early 90s there. Mm-hmm. I worked there in college. I was a full-time student, and I actually worked at an auto parts store, and then kind of worked at Cruiser Outfitters on the side. And I was building my Land Cruiser that I have to this day. I have a 72 FJ40 that I still have, and I was working on that at Daryl's shop. And in the 2001 timeframe, he decided that he was ready to get out of the Land Cruiser business. He was single and kind of a life of adventure, and he wanted to go be an underwater commercial diver, which is what he ended up doing. So, I mean, kind of guy has traveled all over the world doing neat stuff, and he sold me the business. And I didn't take over a whole lot because it was a full service shop down in downtown Salt Lake. I wasn't prepared to be a full-time shop owner as far as like doing full-time service, but Daryl did zero online sales, a lot of in-person sales for locals, but that was, late 90s, early 2000s were kind of right when the internet was ramping up, when people were doing a lot of mail orders, starting to buy parts. So I turned it into the ultimate part-time school job to get me through college. And that was in 2002. And then I finished school in 2006. And I sold cruiser parts all through school. I'd go to cruiser events, bring a bunch of parts with me, used parts, a lot of new stuff, import stuff from Japan, Australia. Just, I literally started at my mom's house in like their garage. And, every day they'd come home, there'd be like new pallet full of Landcruiser parts sitting there. And they're going like, what is this? This is crazy. Still stuff in their house too is the crazy part. All these years later, still a bunch of stuff in the attic I need to go get one of these days, Landcruiser parts. But yeah, that's how it all worked. I finished school in 2006 thinking I was going to go get quote unquote a real job. And is actually one of my undergraduate professors. He said, what is it you do now? And he knew, but he's like, why don't you keep doing that? Like, you've got this good thing going. Why wouldn't you keep playing with that? And I thought, man, he's right. I went to school all these years to go get a real job, but why don't I keep playing with Landcruisers? And I didn't know if it was going to work out or how long it would work, but that's been, let's see, I graduated just about 15 years ago now from college, and here we are still playing with Landcruisers every day.
And man, Landcruisers have taken you all over the world. Kurt, out of our team, I think is probably the most traveled. He has been everywhere. You did how many of the E7 expeditions? I did 5 of the continents with Expedition 7. And then you've done a bunch on your own. You were just in Saudi Arabia. You've been everywhere. Not everywhere. There's a lot of places I'd still like to go, but certainly fortunate to have gone a lot of neat places with Expedition 7, which is how I met Clay and got in with XO. So I've been really fortunate and blessed to be involved in some really neat adventures, and I hope more to come. Yeah, absolutely. I met you for the first time at the SEMA Auto Show back 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't 8 months later, we were on a plane to Russia together. And that's when we got to know each other. And one of my first funny memories of Kurt is we were on this airplane going to Russia. Where was it? We were going to Irkutsk. We were landing in somewhere there. Mm-hmm. And we're on the final flight from London to Irkutsk. It was like a long flight, 8 hours or something like that. And we got sat down next to each other, but my seat had a cushion in it, but Kurt's seat didn't have a cushion in it. Right. It's pretty much flat, right? The seat was broken out. One corner of the seat was broken out, and the cushion was kind of like wedged down into a hole. So he sits in it and is like this, and you're not going to sit 8 hours in an airplane. So he's like, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me. And she's like, yes, I will go get you something. And, like stuffed a blanket in there. Isn't that right? She stuffed a blanket in there. That's 100% right. That's exactly how it went down. So fast forward like 8 hours, and we've been in the air forever, and it's dark. It's just the plane was black. And I woke up from sleeping, and I got up, and I swear there was not a single soul on board that was awake. And I walked to the back of the airplane to use the bathroom, and all of the stewardesses were asleep too. They're all sitting in their pilot seat chairs, and they're all just sleeping, just bobbing. I could have taken the plane if I had to. Well, we're thankful you decided not to. It was so eerie. Self-control. Yeah, I was like, I hope the pilot's asleep or not asleep up there. Yeah, that's 100%. I remember everything but the being awake in the plane, because I was definitely out cold. I slept great on that plane despite not having a seat and a seatbelt. Yeah. So over the next 3 weeks, Kurt and I got to know each other. We were only in 2 Landcruisers. It was Scott Brady, Kurt, Greg, Andre, and it was just the 4 of us. That's it. It was just the 4 of us. 4 of us plus Andre. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's right. And we wouldn't let Andre drive because he was scary. Scary driver. Great guy. Scary driver. Great guy. And then it took us 3 weeks to cross Russia, and so over those 3 weeks, we got to know each other pretty good. So fast forward 10 years later, here we are. Here we are. Covered a lot of ground since then, haven't we? Yeah, for sure. So let's see. We're going to talk 62s a little bit tonight. I'm going to pull up what I had for us here. I also wanted to say you also started a new division of your company. It's just getting started. You want to tell everybody what it is? Yeah. So
we have it's long overdue, and that is e-commerce with our company. We've forever been, you call and talk to somebody on the phone. There's 3-4 people, on phones all day long. We've always had a walk-in, counter where you can come pick up parts, and we've shipped all over the world and done a lot of business via email, but we're finally, all these years later, getting around to e-commerce. So we spooled up our e-commerce stuff, and you really haven't even fully launched it yet. We're just adding product to it, but definitely it's fully functional. And that's called cruisertech.com, and tech is TEQ, kind of takes, from the history of Toyota. There you go, the TEQ. It's not properly TEQ. That's kind of how we look at it, but it's cruisertech.com. And so it's a full e-commerce, so you can order Land Cruiser parts all hours of the day, weekends, nights. And eventually we'll have everything on there, and then cruiseroutfitters.com will point to that, and that'll kind of become the Cruiser Outfitter side of things. And Cruiser Tech will serve as a brand name for kind of our house brand kits, the things that we assemble, the parts we make. We do have a lot of kits that we do, a lot of parts that we're having manufactured, and that's going to continue growing as it goes.
And that leads us into our cruisers. So I've been working on this. I've had this Land Cruiser. It's a 1989 62 series. I bought it from my neighbor. It hasn't left an owner more than 5 miles in radius from its original owner. It's been just kind of passed around within the 5 miles here. So technically I'm the fourth owner, but the third owner was the son of the second owner. So
cool.
it was like gifted to him. So, and they were friends of mine. So I got a really good deal on it, and I love it. So since I got it, I've been using, working with Kurt over the years and his staff. And what's amazing with Kurt and his crew is how they can list part numbers and all this. And when we were in Russia, I got exposed to this because Kurt's like, hey, we're in Magadan, Russia. Do you want to go see the Toyota dealership? And I said, sure, let's go. And so we go down there, and then it wasn't really a dealership. And then we went to this parts center, and all Kurt did was walk around and take pictures of part numbers of all kinds of stuff we couldn't get in the US. And that is the heart and soul of Cruiser Outfitters, because he scours the world for awesome cruiser parts. And I can only imagine what you just found in Saudi Arabia.
A lot of neat stuff. Saudi has a lot of Land Cruisers over there. I hope we can get over there with XO one of these days, because there's a lot of adventure to be had in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have ordered a couple of your kits. I did a transfer case rebuild kit. I've done the front end, the axle rebuild kit.
Overhaul kit, you bet.
The overhaul kit, and got the new. You have a lot of the good Ace and hubs, right?
We do, yeah. Japanese, the Eisen Japanese hubs.
Eisen, yeah. So I did that on this, and so and then you were working on a cruiser too. What cruiser are you working on?
Well, I always have a few projects going, but the one that I've got the most motivation behind is I've got a 1988 HJ61. So that's the 60 series, very similar to the FJ62 behind you there, but it's a non-US Japanese model. And I just saw Hayden chimed in on the questions and said, make sure Clay knows the HJ61 is the best Land Cruiser ever. He's got an HJ61 as well. FJ62 is pretty cool. The HJ61
no contest
has they're all different. They're all great.
Different. Yeah.
The HJ61 has a 6-cylinder turbo diesel. So it's kind of a neat platform. We never did see those in the US, but they were available, in other global markets. So that's the one that I've kind of been tinkering with. I've owned it for 4 or 5 years now, and started collecting a lot of parts for it, bumpers, sliders, right after I first got it. But then just life got busy, projects got busy, and it has sat since then. And with a little more night and weekend free time on my hands this last month with everything going on in the world, I got back to working on it. So I was out there last night till 1 a.m. again, painting and cleaning things up. And I've got the rear suspension all installed, and I'm excited to drive it. I'm pumped.
Man, that's awesome. And so Kurt and I, last week or 2 weeks ago now, kind of just decided, hey, let's get our cruisers up and running, and let's take a trip. We were thinking June, because for Utah and Montana, already Montana's doing really well on the COVID stuff. We're lifted up pretty good. So hopefully we would be able to go do something. And we talked about the ranch. And so you're just getting everything dialed in for this trip,
right,
as am I. As am I. So what are the things that you're doing right now? And I saw some of these questions that came in when we asked, like, what would you want to know for Kurt? You're taking this new vehicle to you that you haven't really taken on a trip before.
One trip.
Okay.
I took it on a relic run like 4 years ago as a 100% bone stock Landcruiser, and did a pretty big trip up through the western UNAs and up through the mountains with it. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty, it needs a lot of attention.
So what are you focusing on?
Yeah, great question. Suspension. It had completely flogged out bone stock suspension. So the thing was practically riding on the bump stops. It's a 25, well over 25, almost 30-year-old vehicle. It's been 32 years old. That's crazy to think it's a 32-year-old truck, but it's still really clean. But the suspension was completely gone. So I'm putting a complete new suspension. I'm doing bumpers and sliders, mostly protection type stuff. As soon as that's done, I will do a full complement of belts, hoses. I may do a water pump on it, even though it's got kind of lower miles, but I don't know when it was last done. And just all the regular maintenance type stuff.
And those are all things with an older vehicle that could kind of leave you out to dry somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're so easy to do when time is on your side. But, when you are going to leave for a trip or on your way out of town and your water pump gives up the ghost and starts, dripping fluid all over, it's kind of the wrong time to be addressing it if you're on your way out of town or if I'm on my way up to Montana. So some of those good preventive maintenance items, and they're not really expensive. And I see a lot of questions popping in on the side here too about just right-hand drive and, things to do. What do I think about right-hand drive and JDM imports? And the answer is, like, I don't think there's a bad Landcruiser to own, period. I don't, my personal belief is they haven't made a bad one yet, and they keep getting better as they get newer. But it's naive to think that any old Landcruiser isn't going to need parts and need some love and need attention. And look, I wouldn't be in business if people didn't need parts for their old Landcruiser. So I think they're great vehicles. I think they have really good longevity and they're really reliable, but anybody that tells you they never broke down has probably never owned one or never tried to leave town with one, because they've got a lot of mechanical systems, and certainly they need parts and they need attention. So it behooves you to do all that on the front end before a trip, rather than, wait till the night before to find out you've got a leaky water pump or bad belts or a leaky hose.
Well, I've found that out the hard way. I was headed to a relic run 3 years ago. I don't know
3 years ago.
And the transmission on this sucker overheated.
Right.
Come to find out, the previous owner, they had put in a radiator, but they didn't have a return line to the transmission to cool it, and so it just overheated. I was super loaded down, and that was that. And I didn't get to go on the relic run, and so we rebuilt it. We've rebuilt everything, put a tranny cooler on it now, and it's good to go. But yeah, that's a terrible time to learn. So I've taken that lesson and I'm working on some stuff here. I'm actually going to, on Sunday, this cruiser goes down to Overland Cruisers, and they're going to do some stuff because I just frankly don't have all the time to do the hoses. I found that they're pretty stiff. They're really hard.
Yeah.
So it's time to do those. They found some headrests for me for the back.
Nice.
It's been a fun project. Yeah. And so I'm going to have them look at a few other things. I want the power antenna to go up and down and keep it stock if they can find it. And so they're going to do some stuff. It does have an oil pan leak. It's got to get fixed. And so they'll probably have it for a couple weeks getting it done while I'm spooling up a bunch of other stuff. So I'm cheating on you, Kurt. I'm taking it to a shop.
Oh, good. I know those guys well, and they're fantastic gentlemen up there. We do a lot of work with them, so you're in good hands.
Right on. So what else? So we're planning this trip, and a lot of people just recently have asked us how to plan a trip. Do you have any tips for them offhand? Because Kurt does a lot of our logistics plannings on the big trips, especially the day-to-day stuff, and helping us flesh out the big picture on things. And so, yeah, Kurt, do you have any quick pointers for folks that are looking to maybe make their first trip? Maybe they're getting their cars up and running and they're going to take a trip here in a few weeks when this all lifts.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that. We're starting to see that here in Utah. Just even last week, they lifted some of the regulations related to COVID. And I think as each week goes on, we're going to see more and more. And there's this big bottleneck of like pent up energy of everybody wanting to get out and see things. So I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the more common and popular areas. There's an area here just west of Salt Lake that last weekend they estimated over 2,000 vehicles out there. And on a normal weekend, you'd maybe have 300 or 400. So when you think about like that kind of numbers, that's like a massive influx of people. And of course, with that, there were some injuries and some rollovers because just everybody wants to get out. It's spring. We missed out on all our spring opportunities, our Jeep safaris, our cruise Moabs. And so everyone's going to want to get out. So I would say back to planning, I would encourage people to maybe look at some less visited and off the beaten path spots. And you can find a lot of really neat ones. I love ghost towns. I love old mining history and ghost towns. So there's some amazing resources, not just for Utah, but the West in general, but really all over the US. So look at some off the beaten path ghost towns that maybe you can plan a trip around.
Good idea.
A lot of people like to visit hot springs. There's a lot of good databases and old maps that have all like publicly accessible hot springs around the US. So maybe look for some spots that are out in the Nevada desert or a little more remote. And I know there's some guys that like those are their favorite little backcountry spots going like, no, I don't want to share those, but there's plenty to go around. There's a lot of public land. As far as like logistical planning routes like that, my first go-to almost always, and I can show you my stack of them over here in the office is I'll grab them, go away from that, I'm a benchmark atlas guy. So I don't know if you can see all these, my Utah, all my states are here, you know? And that's the first map I go to is like a benchmark atlas just for big picture planning. And I love devices like the Garmin Overlander that we use a lot. I've used the HEMA and Gaia apps a lot over the time. They're all fantastic. And when you're on the trip and on the trail, I think those are really good resources. But I think ahead of time, a big picture paper map, or using maybe even Google Earth or Google Maps to kind of start putting pins on the paper and decide where you want to go on a day-to-day basis, and then kind of start focusing, how many days do I have? Where do I want to go? And maybe get a little further away than you normally, your normal weekend spot, because we can all guarantee those are going to be really popular when things open back up.
Yeah, push it a little bit. Be safe, but push it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see, I'm going to go back to.
I see Justin. He said, nice to see paper atlases in use. Justin, I'm a total paper map guy. I love digital maps, but I have an office here behind me full of paper maps, and there's nothing more therapeutic to me personally than planning a trip on a bunch of paper maps, laying them out on my desk here, and using a ruler to kind of measure routes and distances. It's just so much. It's easier for me to concentrate on that than using like a tablet or a device ahead of time. Now on the trip, I love paper maps, but it's not that easy to thumb through on day-to-days and big stuff. So that's where devices like the Overlander really come into play. But yeah, good one. A lot of good comments here. I'm seeing some great questions.
There's a lot of stuff in there. I have a couple that came in from our Instagram over the year or over this week, last couple of days. And one of them was, what for you is an essential gear to have in your opinion when you're first going to go out? Like, what are your staples?
So this last weekend, I took my old FJ40. Last few weekends, been just doing some little local overnighter trips, real small group, and just keeping things super isolated, if you will. And I don't even have a fridge that I take in that Landcruiser. I have one I can pull out of something else and plug in the back, but I just went back to an ice chest and a cooler because for an overnighter, even a couple day trip, it works really well. But I would say the thing that I kind of like enjoy the most, this is kind of a crazy one maybe, but my jet boil. Like, I love that little jet boil. I can do all my cooking. I can do my coffee in the morning, a couple meals during the day, a quick hot lunch if you need to off of a quick little jet boil. And then the next one would be just good sleeping gear, a good comfortable pad, air mattress or pad, and a good night's sleep. Everything's off the table, and the whole trip can be sour, but I can survive off of, me, Snickers and a Red Bull. I don't have to eat really well. I don't either.
Her and I are kindred spirits here. Like when we went to Greenland, we ate Snickers and M&Ms for 30 straight or 20 straight days, and we were just happy as clams.
Oh, no, doing great. I didn't feel like eating Snickers again for at least a week, but overall I did.
Funny thing is I've continued to eat Reese's peanut butter cups like I'm addicted to them since then. Like, I'm gonna have to talk to Greg about that.
he got us hooked on that. But yeah, so the food, I know, I'd say choose whatever is your comfort thing. Like what's going to actually improve your trip. People all too often go out and spend money on like gear that they hear they need to have, like an awning. And awnings are awesome and they will improve your trip around camp and your camp lifestyle. But don't ever let that be a roadblock of going on a trip, because if you've ever seen like the relic run trips we do where we take all old vehicles and old camping gear, you can have as much, or I'd even argue more fun by keeping things simple than you will by overcomplicating it. Nothing gives me personally more anxiety than when I've gone with people before and they spend 2 hours setting up their camp and we're there for a night, and I'm going like, man, they're gonna have to pack all this back up in the morning. They've got the bathroom tent set up and they've got the awning with the ground sides, and then they got the Camp Chef giant stove, and those are all cool pieces of gear and they all have their moments. But for me, keeping it simple is what makes getting out the most enjoyable. Like if it's just quick and easy, I can just throw some stuff in the back of the vehicle. Right here behind me, I keep 2 bags. I've got a bag with my sleeping gear and I've got a bag with some clothes in it. It's got my overnight, my DOP bag in it. It's got a jet boil in there. It's got my InReach. I can be camping 15 minutes from this house.
Air compressor.
No. Any questions? A lot of love for paper maps. Purple Lizard maps in Pennsylvania. I've never heard of that one. That sounds cool. I'm seeing a lot of Mountain Dew talk. Bryson, thank you. I love Mountain Dew.
I love Mountain Dew too.
I love Mountain Dew.
So good.
Ryan says, peanut butter cups are what you crave after lockdown. Okay. I'm going to take his word for that.
And I want one
right now. A lot of less is more. I think, I think we're guilty of that people see us go on our trips and we take a lot of gear. And there's multiple reasons for that. One is we have that. We've got some great relationships with vendors that want to see the gear used and have us use it. And I think we use best practice that we don't ever take stuff that we wouldn't ever, feel comfortable using. We've left a lot behind. I know, Clay, this has been a big thing for you the last few years, is putting all the vehicles on a diet, right? Yep. Not packing nearly as much stuff along if we're not going to use it.
Yep. And it that comes with time. It takes time to figure out what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. And, for us, we had being sponsored and having access to a lot of cool equipment. You kind of say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll take that. Yeah, I'll put that on. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. And then, they just get really heavy. And then we start seeing that create drag on our trips that is actually working against us towards the end goal of, shooting a show and having a good time and being, enjoying our time out there, because it starts to be like too much,
Yeah, when you're shopping, there's some other questions popping in about gear, and I love it. Is my whole thought on gear shopping is like, think about it holistically. Is it really going to improve your trip? One, that's great. If it improves your trip, by all means, have the most exquisite camp setup you want to have. It's your camp, it's your trip. If it's going to improve it legitimately, then absolutely do it. The other one though is it going to offer you the opportunity to get out and recreate more often? That piece of gear. And I would argue that, like, I could say a fridge certainly does that. There are a lot of times when the fridge in my 200 series stays packed for months on end. There's things that never come out of it. It's just on all the time, and it's so quick and easy to throw a few more things in there and run out of town for a night. I don't even need to worry about a run to the grocery store. So I think that's very legitimate. There are other items though that I think we kind of justify to ourselves, because at the end of this, we're gear junkies. We love gear. But think about that. Don't let any one of those items be your hurdle for not going out, because nobody needs a fridge. People have driven around the world without a fridge. Nobody needs a rooftop tent. They're all great items to have, and they will improve your camping, but they're not mandatory. And if anybody tells you otherwise, tell them to come on a relic run where we sleep like dogs in the dirt. It'd be cool. And we all have smiles on our face the entire time.
Totally. Yeah, there's a time and a place for roughing it. Like, roughing it's really fun, And then there's times when you don't want to rough it. And it just depends on what's going on, which might dictate what you bring.
Totally. Yeah. And like some of the trips we did a lot of the trips we've done as XO, like a fridge is mandatory when you're camping and off the grid for 3 and 4 and 5 days. Sorry, ice isn't going to fly. And in a lot of Latin America, South and Central America, you can't buy a bag of ice at a grocery store. It doesn't exist, you know. That's
Ice, yeah, they don't serve you ice in a restaurant. There, it's just not there. You got to have
Right.
a fridge.
so
That's yeah. It certainly lends itself to the two worlds of like overlanding. There's like the capital O overlanding over here that is, to me, is the most truest of sense. It's kind of like wilderness and wilderness. You know, you have little W wilderness and then capital wilderness. For me, maybe capital overlanding is when you're crossing borders, you're spending a lot of time remotely in foreign countries, working through different cultures. And then you have your little overlanding, which is kind of what we do in the States. Our weekend warrior stuff, maybe you're there for a weekend to 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. Yeah, those two are, when we start talking about those two things, you can actually get away with a lot more gear and stuff on your truck on the little O overlanding than you would on the big one. You actually find that when you start traveling a lot more, your stuff pares down a lot.
yeah, it's almost ironic that way. You'd think, you know, from the outside perspective that you need more gear to go further, longer, but it actually plays in your favor to have less stuff and kind of learn to live without it, some of those comfort items, than you would traveling locally. Call it local landing, or, you know, there's some, you know, fantastic
Local landing, that's a new one for me.
local landing. I did not phrase it, but I was on a local landing panel at Overland Expo a couple years ago that a gentleman, Sean, put together. I kind of like that term, local landing, is kind of doing that exploration in your own backyard, maybe 1 and 2 day trips away from your house, which is awesome travel. And there's probably, you know, nowhere in the United States and North America, and definitely when you get into South and Central America, that you can't do like little micro trips like that, like 2 and 3 day trips that are like really neat and loaded for adventure. And I think you're right. You can definitely pack a little more gear and use those as good opportunities to vet some of the things you've purchased and decide whether you actually need them. If it was just kind of one of those things that you thought you had to have versus things that make you get out more or make your trip more enjoyable.
Great stuff. What else we got in there? We got a lot of good comments.
There's some great ones. There was just one I saw that said from Earl. I'm going to slaughter the last name, Earl, but it looks like Skull Dodger. And it says, when you go on big trips, how do you decide where to go? That's like the $1 million question for XO. It's a tough one.
But we have a whole room, this room right here, dedicated with massive screen, a massive table to put 8 people around it or more. And we sit here and we go through on where do we want to go. We spend meetings here. And for me, Kurt, I asked you this question years ago. I asked you what you think makes a really good explorer and an overlander. And I thought you had the best answer I'd heard. And do you remember what you said?
I don't know. I don't.
Okay, you said you need to be a curious person.
Okay.
Curiosity. A person needs to be curious. And Kurt is one of the most curious people I know.
To a fault.
To a fault. I mean, geez. Anyway, now, so the question is, what are you curious about and what interests you, and look for those things and start there. That's my goal. Or that's my tip.
That's a great tip. Yeah. I kind of mentioned earlier, it was about the trip planning, and find that thing that you want to go see. Because as we found out through our many different travels, we did Central America, and a lot of people said, hey, that was really neat and glad you guys did that. The show was great, but I'll probably never go there. Like, that doesn't appeal to me, and it doesn't maybe make any like logistical or financial sense. Interesting though, is we looked at like kind of the numbers and actually poured over a map. It's like, it's closer to drive from Salt Lake to Panama City in Panama than it is to drive from Salt Lake to Prudhoe Bay, right?
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of extra borders and some more logistics involved, but it's kind of an interesting perspective. But don't go to Central America if that doesn't interest you. That doesn't make you any more or less legitimate than anybody. And if people tell you that, they're wrong. You know, they're trying to justify their own experiences. Choose what is interesting to you. Don't go to Prudhoe Bay because you've heard that you have to do that to be an overlander or to call yourself an adventurer of any sorts. Find those things that are really interesting to you. So a few of the neatest people I know, like that are explorers and guys that I like, love to go on trips with them because of how dialed they are and how the neat things they go. One of them is a local gentleman that does a ghost town trip here in Utah. and we kind of barely even get outside of Utah. And that guy spends 30 plus weekends a year, long trips exploring and backpacking, hunting all over Utah. And he never really needs to leave like the Western states. And I consider him no less of like even the most authentic explorer that I can think, that I know than guys that have driven around the world and have done some really neat trips in that way. So, and just because
Absolutely.
because he doesn't desire to do that. He just looks at it and goes like, hey, that's neat. Those are really cool. But there's this other place in Wyoming I want to go see. And, he gets really deep on it. He does a lot of research on the history and puts together really neat trips to go to ghost towning. So my point of all that is just find that thing that you like. If it is ghost towns, if it's old mines, maybe it's difficult trails, maybe it's finding trails with technical terrain, and use those as the impetus behind your trip, not something that you saw as like a must-do trail to be any status. That makes sense.
Totally. I think that's spot on. That's great. There's a famous mountaineer, Alex Lowe, that was known for saying the best mountaineer is the one who's having the most fun.
Totally.
And he was the apex mountaineer of his time, with him and Conrad Anker, and that was his response.
Yeah, somebody just replied, Judson said, Prudhoe Bay, we made that mistake. We lost out on a lot of other places in Alaska because we pushed so hard to get north. And you kind of think about that. I mean, for some, that is the goal. I mean, I know with XO, the goal was to do the Pan American Highway. And you can't exactly say you did the Pan American unless you connect all the dots. So, and that was, I think that was our point of doing all those trips, was we wanted to see the entire Pan American Highway. And sometimes we made decisions based on that. Like, we could have gone over here and maybe that was going to be really neat. And we knew it would be, but you know what? Our goal was to do the Pan American Highway. So, we had to kind of stick to that and call that our mission, right? And call that our goal.
Yep.
I don't think it's wrong. And I have no regrets, I'm happy.
Yeah, me neither. And the way that the Pan American came up back in Alaska, you see it in our Alaska Yukon season. I forget what episode it is, but we're sitting at the table and we're making the decision. Should we go up there? And at the time, doing the Pan American was like, what? Like, this is so far out here it was such a long shot to even think that way. But it was like, in that moment, we're 350 miles from starting that process. Why wouldn't we start it, and that spurred on something else. And that's what really set the hook for us to, maybe we can achieve the Pan American. And it took us 7 years to do it. It took time. Yeah.
It wasn't a single trip. Some are fortunate to be able to, take off. My good friend Dave kind of did that all in one big continuous trip and was able to break away from life and work. But for XO, somebody asked earlier today, do these guys have jobs? Like we all have jobs and real lives and families. So we were able to do it in 6 to 8 week segments at a time. And some of them were 2 segments to do South America, for example, but we had to make the best of it and to make the most of the time we had. A lot of people said, man, you guys really went too fast. You could have spent a month here. And they're right. But there's 2 things that come into play. There's one, that's kind of our travel style a little bit, at least mine. I love getting to know a place, but I also like to hey, what's down the road? What's next, right? And also that schedule, if we knew we wanted to get to Ushuaia and finish the Pan American Highway, we kind of knew that you have X amount of days and you can't dilly-dally too far off the Pan American. We saw a lot of, the Salar de Uyuni, when we did the Lagunas route. I mean, we saw some neat stuff. I think we absolutely did it justice, and I love the trip we did. But could you spend twice as much time there? You could spend 10 times time there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people spend a year just on the South American portion. Yeah, there's travel styles for sure. We like to travel fast and hard, and there's something fun about that. I remember coming back from South America. Maybe it was South or Central America, I forget. It was Jeff and I. We went up camping to one of our favorite spots, and we motored up there. It took us 5 or 6 hours to get up there, and we got there right at dusk. We could have set up camp and everything, and we kind of were like, we just came off that expedition. We're like, you know what? I'll bet we can make it home. And dude, we packed up everything, and we turned turned and burned and we got home at midnight, and it was awesome. We were just having so much fun because we just wanted to keep moving, you know, and we were so stuck in the ways. I have a hard time slowing down, like being at the ranch last couple of weeks ago. It's kind of a new thing for me. You know, it's a new muscle I've got to strengthen.
Yeah, and I think it's good and healthy to do. And it's not a right or wrong. Some people love to go to, somebody asked in the comments, would you ever go to a place you've been to before? And the answer is, yeah, there's some places here in Utah that I go to a dozen times a year when I can. There's a canyon just south of me called American Fork Canyon that I've probably been up, I dare say, a couple hundred times over the years. It's one that's I really have a soft spot in my heart for. There's some old mining history and some old ghost town history up there, but I just love the mountains. And no matter how many times I've been up there, I still, like, if the opportunity pops up, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buzz up there for the night.
Yeah.
And that's my relaxing type of trips too, because I have seen so much of it. I don't feel like I'm in a hurry to see any more of it. So maybe it's healthy to plan trips to go to places that you've been to before. So then you're forced to kind of stretch that new muscle and learn to relax, right? Because you've already seen what's around the next bend. You already know.
Yep, I agree. I have a place like that too, and that's important to have, I think.
Yeah.
So let's see what else we got here. It's 7:45. Doing great. I see a lot of, I mean, we could talk gear real quick, or we could talk all kinds of stuff. What do you have to do yet to your 62 before it's ready on our trip?
I just got to finish putting the suspension on.
Are you going old man emu?
Yep. Yeah, it's got an old man emu system underneath there. And somebody just asked if American Fork Canyon's open yet. The answer is no, it's not yet. It's like an ongoing joke in Utah because, like, winter just ended. It quit snowing like last week. And so everyone's like got cabin fever ready to get up there already. So there's a second, is American Fork Canyon open yet? No, not yet. I'll let you all know when it's open. You'll all hear about it. What were we chatting about? Oh, what I have to do to mine.
Yeah.
So the suspension and really just like a good tune up and fluids on it, and then it's ready to roll. It was completely running, driving before. There was nothing wrong with it. This was all just inspired projects to kind of get it dialed up to be able to take on a trip. As I mentioned, that suspension was so flogged out and sagging that it was on the bump stops. It was miserable to drive down even a bumpy road on it.
Right on. Bradley Hitchcock, I gotta throw you thanks. You donated $5 to Expedition Overland for this feed. Right on.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Shout out. I appreciate that. I'm having to scroll all the way down to get the bottom of these comments. It's awesome.
Another is AFC Open. I'm going to come get you. There's another one, though. Somebody asked, Ace, good question, is why don't we bring dogs on our trips? And the easy answer is with XO is that's a lot. I think we're already herding so many cats as a crew and a lot of people and camera photography and vehicles that some even well-behaved pets would be tough. I love dogs. I've got a German Shepherd just behind the door behind me, probably sitting there waiting to hang out. And he loves to camp, and I love taking him camping. But on XO trips with the travel and the in and out of the vehicles and switching vehicles so much, it'd be really tough to have a pet along.
Guaranteed we'd end up leaving one somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it works. By the way, what is the name of your dog?
Tech. There it is. Hard to forget.
If you want to know if Kurt's a diehard Toyota fanboy, which I saw one guy saying, is this a fanboy session? Yeah, it is. And Kurt is the biggest of fanboys.
Yeah, somebody asked if this was a Toyota commercial, and I'd say XO's done a pretty good job of diversifying the last little while. There's
guess what though? There's not a single other company that has stepped up to support Expedition Overland.
Yeah, well,
Toyota has. Thank you, Toyota.
Toyota's done some amazing things. We've driven around the world on Toyotas. I've raced Toyotas. They're a good vehicle. So we're not here to be fanboys. I think there's a lot of great vehicles. And I always tell people this is, I think it'd be really boring if everybody had a Landcruiser. And I mean that truly. While it'd be really nice to have that many more customers, perhaps from like a selfish standpoint, I love that there is some like vehicular diversity And it's fun to see guys with old Broncos and old Chevys and GMs. I got a good buddy that's got an awesome K5 Blazer that he brings on the relic run, and then a lot of Broncos that have come out. So that's what makes it neat. It'd be boring if we all have the same vehicles. Toyotas just happen to have treated us really well. And really it's the vehicles that we know well and we are comfortable with if we have to make a repair or where to get parts, things like that.
With that being said, branching out into other areas of adventure, which has kind of been a goal of ours in the last few years. You know, we got into power paragliding, a few of us did, and the team supported us in that. And then this year, also built out the Ram, you know, learning new platforms, built out the Gladiator, whole new platform, expanding our horizons. This year, I bought a motorcycle to learn a new discipline, you know? So I think it's important that we all drive different stuff and expand our horizons. And I mean, that's why we did what we've done. We want a greater depth of skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, don't get fixated on vehicles. Everyone likes to corner us into like, what is the best off-road vehicle? And what is, if you could only choose one, which one would you choose? And I'd say the best vehicle you have is the one that's got a tank full of gas and you've got a couple days to spare and go do something with it. Doesn't matter what you're driving. You know, we saw people on the Pan American Highway on, you know, three up on a 50cc scooter cruising along. I mean, just make the best of what you have. Don't get too fixated on having the perfect vehicle, because I'll tell you what, they don't exist.
Nope. No. Yeah, it's funny because, you know, people will ask us, like, you got these vehicles. We have a Tundra, a Tacoma, a Landcruiser 200 series, the 62 series, a Gladiator. What else am I missing? The Ram with the camper on the back. And they said, which one are you taking? Like, I don't know. You know, I'm fortunate to be able to have access to a different vehicle. All these, but they all have their strengths. They all have their weaknesses. And it boils down to just take the one you got.
Yeah.
That's great.
The one you're the most familiar with. A good question here from Kyle I just saw is, how do you guys feel about using drones to recon trails? And I will tell you, my opinion is it's been pretty amazing. It's worked really well. I am usually of the opinion, you've probably heard me joke about it before, that anytime the drone comes out, I know we just lost an hour of our travel time. Like 1 hour is gone.
Hey, we have really got that.
Yeah.
We have brought that down.
Yeah, Clay and crew, you know, Eric, I mean, the whole crew, you guys have got it down a lot with flying the drone. But it used to be like, if I heard Clay come on the radio and says, hey guys, we really got to fly this. This is beautiful. I always just need like 1 hour gone. But back to the actual question is, reconning trails has been extremely valuable to us. I can think of a few occasions. One up on the Mackenzie Trail, we flew the drone to figure out where the actual trail was. You know, we
couldn't see it from the ground.
It was so overgrown. It was just so overgrown. We had no clue where the trail was. And as soon as you got that drone up and with the camera, you're going like, oh, it's clear as day. You can kind of see it winding through over here. So I think it's a great opportunity and an option. If you have one, take it. I mean, use it for that. I don't think you need I've never found myself on a trip that we couldn't complete because we're like, man, shucks, we didn't have a drone next time, you know? Yeah. But if you have one, still use
Paso Rio Mayor in South America, in Chile, we used it. All those river crossings. We did a big recon. We flew that thing way out there to figure out where to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Overland, they mentioned a great point that, you know, getting your drone license is very important if you're going to be doing any commercial flying, filming for sure. But along with that, I think when you get that license, you're going to learn a lot about the operating conditions on when you can use that, because it's certainly not appropriate in every place that you can drive a vehicle. Even national parks come to mind and other places, and maybe just other sensitive situations with wildlife, or maybe other campers where, you know, you flying the drone is going to impact their backcountry experience. So, you know the laws, but also, you know, maybe have some ethics in mind of when it's appropriate to use your drone versus just getting out on foot and hiking down the trail to figure out where it goes.
For sure. And you have to be super aware of airspace. Like Nevada is a really tough place to fly a lot of drones in because it's so full of military airspace. You know, you got to really know your stuff. So yeah, know your stuff before you get out there with your drone. Let's see. What do you have for adventures coming up?
Great question. My spring, I think like everybody, probably everyone can sympathize and we can frown together on this, is that everything's been canceled. So I had a really busy spring lined up between, I go to the Easter Jeep Safari every year. I'm not a Jeep guy, but they let us Toyota folks come out, and I have a lot of really good Jeep friends. So it's been a great time for about the last, 20, 25 years, been going down to, let's see, 20, little over 20 years been going to Jeep Safari. So it was sad to see that not happen this year, because that's kind of been like the real big kickoff for adventures. And followed up by Cruise Moab, which is a Landcruiser event that I've been part of for a lot of years too, and really enjoy seeing a lot of, friends that have become family over the years. And with the this COVID scariness that's gone on, it's naturally put all the brakes on all those events. So we're still kind of reeling in to see what is going to happen, because even events in May and into June are starting to get kind of kicked down the road. So I predict the next one I'll kind of be at will probably be maybe Overland Expo West, and they've moved their date back to accommodate this crazy life of ours.
Yeah, July, I have it here. Our whole team will be gone July 19th through the 27th for Expo West.
For Expo West, yeah.
Yeah, it's 23rd, 24th, 25th, 6th. Yeah, if you're interested.
So that'll probably be like the first bigger one this summer, just because of all the other stuff that canceled. A lot of little small trips go. I've been, here in Utah, we're fortunate that, social distance camping is still completely legal and ethical. In fact, no better place to get away from a lot of other people is to head into our Western Utah desert. So I've been out the past few weekends, and I'll probably keep going out each weekend camping and exploring just the deserts in my own backyard. And I'll probably keep doing that till the mountains open up, and then kind of get up in the higher elevations till some of those bigger events kick off.
Yeah, right on. I'm going to head to the ranch with my boys this weekend. We're going to probably get their dirt bikes out and get a little riding done.
Nice.
Camping done, get them to stretch their legs. We've been riding a lot of motorcycles right here on the place, and they need something bigger.
Are they getting proficient with the bikes?
Oh man, they can shred some corners, and everything that looks like a jump has been demolished. And so I got to get them out.
Nice.
I think our trip to maybe the ranch again in June, we were kind of talking, that might be my next one. Then after that, we're going to see what the Canadian border does. I might go north. I have something to talk to you about as well about the Canadian border. We'll have to dig into that at some other time, but it's really exciting.
Okay, I'm excited to hear about that.
Then Expo West, we'll be there at Expo West. I don't think we don't have a beat on if we're going to do the Rocky Mountain Expo at this time. We might all be on trips because our window got shrunk.
Right.
So we'll have to really be out doing stuff. A couple other final announcements, and then I might be doing something. I hope to take a 3 or 4 week trip, maybe this fall. Yeah, well, I have to. I'm contracted to do it, so we'll see what that turns into. I got some good ideas cooking up right now. So yeah, well, it's getting close to the end here. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you for supporting Expedition Overland. Thank you for doing all the things, the subscribing, man, we've been getting a lot of fan mail in the mail, like real handwritten stuff. It's been really
that's cool.
We got a painting the other day. You can see it on our other live videos we put up. The painting that someone painted xoverland. I'm spacing his name right now, but it was really awesome, and we put it on the back there. Appreciate all the support, and I hope everyone is really doing their very best to keep their chin up, to advance themselves in this time, so that when you get out, you can be the best human you can. And I am just so looking forward to seeing everybody out there and interacting with people, and I can't wait. And it will end, and we will get back to our lives, our regular scheduled programming eventually, huh?
I sure hope so. I think we will.
I think so too.
People are yearning to get out. I think people want to get back to work and get back to their normal lives, and it'll happen. And I think when it does happen, it's going to be a lot quicker than we all anticipate. I mean, that as soon as this all goes away, then life will be back to normal, and this will be just a crazy memory we all have. I hope.
Yeah, me too. Certainly hope so. So yeah, thank you for tuning in tonight. It's Wednesday. I hope you have a great weekend. We're going to try and be here next week as well. I am traveling a little bit next week. I don't know if we will be able to have this next week. Stay tuned. We'll see. But Kurt, thanks for your time. Thanks for hopping in. Thanks for all your help with the cruiser. And we'll see you soon.
Sometime in June.
Sometime in June.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching, everyone.
See you guys.